Hi, I'm Kenny Mayne, and I'm here to talk to you about my new internet show, Main Street. You know, a wise man once said, you'd have to be an idiot not to watch Kenny Mayne and his new online show, Main Street. He then went on to say a few other wise things before coming back to the subject and angrily saying, let me stress again, you would have to be a real moron not to watch Kenny's show. Not my words, people. The wise man said all that.
Kenny Mayne stars as Kenny Mayne in his new internet show Main Street, now playing on ESPN.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Heading into the home stretch here in the NFL season, and one of our favorite guests, one of the great information guys who's out there, former general manager in the National Football League, currently you see him on the NFL Network all the time. You can read him on the National Football Post, which you can get at nationalfootballpost.com. And one of the valued reads I have each week, Mr. Mike Lombardi. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Bill. How are you?
You've been on fire with your blog the last few weeks.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You really have. You've had some great stuff. I love the Law of Threes. I use that. I think I wish I had thought of this first, but I really think you're onto something here with Pittsburgh and their home field. Because their defense is just a different defense when they're on these faster fields. And now I'm starting to wonder, are they better off not playing a home playoff game?
I think there's no doubt. I think that cow pasture can only hurt them. And, you know, I learned this in 2005. We went to play Denver in Denver when Denver was a good team, and we were terrible. And it snowed that day, and all of a sudden the field was the equalizer. They were no longer a quick team, and we weren't slow anymore. Everybody was slow, and we were able to beat them in a game where Ronald Curry made a great catch in the back of the end zone, and we won the game, which we had no business winning whatsoever. And I think the surface of the field really plays in, and I think New England took advantage of it years ago when they had a muddy track. They could slow down the field, especially when they played Indianapolis. You remember Bill Polian was complaining about the field up in New England for many years, and they can't grow grass. And I think this works against the Steelers. I think the Steelers should put down a fast track for that defense.
Well, what was the I think it was the championship game that they won 20-3 over the Colts, and it rained or snowed that week, and they never put a tarp on the field. They just turned it into chunky soup. And you know, as Bill Polian always does, he complained like a wimp afterwards. But that's a legitimate. You can do that. It's your home field. You can condition it however you want, right?
No doubt, and that was the advantage that I think that New England at that time, which they needed to slow down the faster Colt team. Certainly, that's your home field. That's what you can do. But this is the opposite. I mean, people were, Cincinnati had an advantage playing them on that mud track the other day, and actually the game was closer than it should have ever been had they played it in Cincinnati.
And now you look at this game coming up with the Cowboys, where it's going to be a tight game, two potential Super Bowl teams. Kind of on the, I think the Giants, and I still think Tennessee are the two favorites, but I think the Steelers and the Cowboys are right there. But if you look at this game being played in Pittsburgh with Marion Barber, slow field, bad weather, it seems like that favors Dallas, right?
Well, it does, but it's impossible to run the ball on the Steelers. I just don't know if you could. To me, the only way to beat the Steelers is to have big plays. You're going to have those two-play 60-yard drives, because if you think you're going to work the ball on an 8 to 10-play drive, they're going to create a negative play at some point during the drive, and it's going to be 2nd and 14, and you're going to have a hard time overcoming that. And that's where I think Dallas is really in a pickle here, because they're not going to be able to really run the ball on them, and now they have to put the ball in Tony's hands, and T.O.'s going to get pressed on every play. So this is going to have to be Roy Williams' breakout game if they can beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh.
I watched the Thanksgiving game with my friend Sal, who's on the podcast after you, and every time Roy Williams made a catch, we were like, was that worth the 6th-rounder? And then he had that big, I think he caught a touchdown or made some big play, and we're like, oh yeah, that was the 3rd-rounder right there. But I don't feel good about that trade if I'm a Dallas fan, because that might have been like the 21st, 22nd pick. And I don't know if he's made that much of a difference. Has he?
No, I don't think he is. I mean, the only way you can feel good about it is if you get rid of T.O. next year and you figure you've got your number one receiver. Because really, in all reality, Miles Austin can do, to a lesser degree, the things that Roy Williams can do. And sometimes when you have too many superstars, it's hard to get them all the ball. And guys have to know their role in football. And Miles Austin knows his role. I'm not sure Roy Williams does. It goes back to the Saints, and I wrote this the other day. Wouldn't they have been better off trading for a big running back than Jeremy Shockey?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, sometimes you trade for something because you want it, but you really don't need it. And, you know, the Saints, I mean, really, when you watch the Saints play, Billy Milner is as good a receiver as Shockey is. You can't tell the difference. It's like all those Reggie Bush supporters. Where are they now when they gain over 400 yards against the Packers on Monday night, or 500 yards? You know, did they need Reggie Bush? No, I don't think they do.
Yeah, you're right. I think you wrote that they would have been better off trading for Derek Ward than Shockey.
No doubt. I mean, that team should be, when you get almost an MVP season like the Saints have had, if you had a legitimate running back on that team with power and finesse that Ward has, as you see what the Giants do and they flex him out, you could be so much dramatically better, but they can't do that because they don't have a back with any power.
In their defense, though, didn't they think they were getting that from Deuce? And they just didn't deliver?
You could, I mean, you're the king of common sense.
Yeah.
And you have to sit there and say, are we going to count on a guy who's had 2 ACL reconstructions and he's an old running back? I mean,
I wouldn't, but I'm saying I think they just evaluated it like he was going to be the guy who performed those tasks for them.
Yeah, I think they probably must have, because I've been writing, they need a big-time running back because people get romanticized by Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush is not a running back. Reggie Bush is a play. He comes in, he runs a play for Reggie Bush.
Yep.
There's a bunch of plays for him, and they needed somebody that they could center the offense around, and it clearly wasn't Deuce. Deuce McAllister looked like Corey Dillon in his last year with the Patriots. It looks like a guard trying to play running back.
Yeah, I think with Reggie Bush, the best analogy is, remember what Dave Meggett used to bring to the table in the 90s, where he's an awesome third down back, awesome special teams guy, and that's really it. That's your ceiling. And I think Bush, that's what he is. He's almost like a much better, much more imposing version of Dave Meggett. You don't want him as your first, second down guy.
Right.
As your third down guy, you like him.
You can't run your offense around him. It's like the three-point shooter in basketball. Once he's in the game, the coach is hugging the three-point line.
Right.
You know, and so you can't really every time Bush comes on the field, everybody's screaming, draw, screen. He's getting the ball. It's hard to run an offense.
You know who else is like that? Devin Hester.
And I think, and I've said this to the general manager of the Bears on numerous occasions, I would make Devin Hester Wes Welker, not Randy Moss.
Why wouldn't they?
I don't know. They line him up outside. You can't see him out there. He's too little.
Yeah,
you know, they should put him in the slot and let him run all those option routes. The two players that I don't think the league gets enough out of is Buffalo doesn't get enough out of Roscoe Parrish.
I agree.
And the Bears don't get enough out of Devin Hester, because if they put him in the slot and created mismatches, you got to double him inside. I mean, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, well, you know, if you're playing the Patriots, you got to stop Randy Moss. And the guy corrected me and said, and you got to double Welker. And he's right.
And that's what happened. You know, the Pats were probably going to lose that game already, but 23-10 after Welker got the Jack Tatum hit put on him, that was it. You can't win coming from behind with Jabbar Gaffney as your number 2 guy.
Right.
I think the worst thing that happened to Devin Hester and the Bears is that Steve Smith succeeded under a similar formula of, this guy's great on special teams, maybe we can turn him into a receiver, and it worked, and he's a deep threat. But I think Steve Smith's like a freak. Like that catch he made that basically won the Carolina-Green Bay game was, that was one of the most remarkable catches I've ever seen. When does a guy catch a ball he can't even see behind his helmet?
It's amazing. And you know, the thing, he's got such unique balance, and I think that's why he'd be a great, you know, that's like Barkley was a great rebounder at 6'4", because he had great balance. And Smith, and I write this all the time, what people don't know about Steve Smith, there's only 3 or 4 routes he runs. He cannot run the passing tree.
Right.
He runs Steve Smith routes, and nobody can duplicate him because only he can run them. And so when you play the Panthers, you got to play his routes. And he can come down with the ball. And great players are always in balance down the field to make catches, and that's where he's always so good.
So what are the 3 routes?
Well, he runs that over route that he ran there, which is kind of like he runs up the field like he's going to go to the post, like he's going to go straight down the field, and he breaks it to the post. But he does it at all different levels. Maybe he'll do it at 12 yards. He does it at 15. He runs the great out, and then he runs the 9 route. And that's all. You never see him run. You never rarely see him. He'll run across the formation on some drives at times, but you never see him run like a smash route or an in route or a slant. You don't see him do those things. He runs 3 or 4 routes, and you got to defend them all.
You got too technical for our audience. What's the 9 route?
Well, the 9 route's a vertical route up the field.
Oh, so it's like in Madden, it's the one where the wide receiver, it's just a straight arrow down the field.
Just straight down the field. And,
Gotcha.
so you have to defend his routes, and if you don't, it's very difficult.
Now, you watched that Panthers-Packers game, right?
Absolutely.
That game, you look at that game and the sequence of the roughing the passer penalty on Rodgers, so they get like first from the 5. They run 3 terrible plays. They kick the field goal. They have it's 4th and goal on the 1. I think, did you write this that they should have gone for it? Somebody did.
I didn't write it, but I would have agreed with you. I
well,
think
just because if you don't get it, they have to go 70 yards in a minute and a half just to kick a field goal. That's not going to happen, so it goes into overtime.
Right.
You don't want to kick it. So anyway, they kick a field goal. The Panthers bring the kickoff back basically almost to midfield. The next play, they hit Smith and to the one. I mean, I've never seen a game flip like that without a turnover.
No, it was remarkable, and I think that the Monday night game, the next night, Chicago, Minnesota flipped like that in a different way. They went for it, didn't get it. Minnesota throws a 99-yard pass.
Yeah.
Instead of, the game all of a sudden, instead of going 14-3 or at least 10-3, now all of a sudden you're down 10-7 and everybody's looking for him.
Right.
I think you're right. I think so often we see this in the NFL. People play by the rules, but they don't necessarily always play by they play by conventional rules as opposed to how the game is going, and I think that's what you have to do.
What did you think of, it was 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember who Dallas was playing, 4th and 2, maybe you kicked the field goal, but they decided to go for it, and they ran that sweep with Barber. I think it was against the Redskins. Did you like that call?
Well, I think anytime you think you got a play that'll work, you got to run it, and those are the situations that you make your money on. I mean, those are the situations that, it's like the game against Tampa Bay. I'm going to write about this today is the New Orleans Tampa Bay game. I mean, Tampa did everything they could to give Drew Brees a chance to win that game, and he failed to do it. And there's certain calls you got to make at that point in the game to win the game, and Tampa didn't make them, but yet they still won the game.
Belichick, that's something he was very good at during the 3 Super Bowl seasons, was knowing when to go for the kill, especially on those 4th and 1s, or slightly unconventional, but not really if you totally believe in your team. And when Green Bay kicked that field goal on 4th and 1, that told me that Mike McCarthy just doesn't think he can get a yard.
Yeah.
Which if you look at it, it's a little microcosm, but on a much grander scale, you're not going to do anything in the playoffs if you can't get a yard when you really need it,
No, I think it's hard to think you're going to get a yard. The thing is Mike's, Carolina only had the ball 22 minutes in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, his defense was playing good. It wasn't like, and they gave up some big plays, but, I think obviously he sent 2 messages. He didn't have enough confidence to keep them pinned back with his defense. He thought that he could win the game if he spread the field out. I don't know. Sometimes I think the Saints did it this year against Denver. They tried to kick a 52-yard field goal, and there's no way they were going to win the game giving the ball back to Denver.
Right.
And they end up missing the field goal.
Well, this Packers team has been really, really frustrating and hard to figure out. They're 5-7. They have to be one of the 5 greatest 5-7 teams of all time. They could easily have been 9-3. They murdered the Colts at home. Like, they've had these games that make you think, this team really might be one of the best teams, and just have repeatedly shot themselves in the foot. I don't understand how they're not going to make the playoffs. I don't get it.
I don't know how Minnesota makes it over them, but they beat Minnesota. Minnesota beat them, and I keep waiting for them to come out of their spell, but they haven't really done it. And I've been right, and I thought they were the best team in the NFC North, but I clearly don't think it's Chicago. And I guess I got to go with Minnesota because they have the best advantage, but I don't ever feel comfortable about going with Minnesota. Green Bay, I was expecting, and I've taken a lot of heat on my website for this today, is, I think Aaron Rodgers has played really well, but at some point, doesn't he have to win that game for you, or at least get them down the field?
Couldn't agree more. I think he's been serviceable, and he's had some good moments, but ultimately he hasn't really been that good. I don't think he has.
He's paid to win that game, and throwing the ball across your body into all that coverage is not a smart play. And I think when they traded Brett Favre, and this is what I wrote, this is a growing step for Aaron Rodgers. These are the things these are hurdles you have to get over. And he's making mistakes at critical times that has you and me scratching our heads saying, why are we 5-7? Why are they 5-7?
Are we sure he's healthy?
Well, he during the course of the game, he looks healthy to me, and that decision that he made to throw the ball to John Beeson was really, that one just didn't make any sense at all. I know Cutler does it quite a bit, but Cutler's arm's a little different, but that was really not a smart throw. Across the field, if you were on eye level with that throw, you really can't see that the guy's open. From our vantage point on the television, there's separation between Beeson and him, but when you're the quarterback and you're looking at it, you see different colored jersey and you see your jersey behind it. It's hard to get that ball in there.
I'm not giving up on them because if the Vikings, if they lose those two Williams guys this week, which everybody seems to think this will be the week that those guys get suspended, they have nothing. They have Adrian Peterson, and that's it. You can't tell me that team should be favored in any game if they don't have the Williams brothers.
And they always have the great equalizer in the coach. You talk
exactly.
about a coach who scratches your head sometimes, and you say, oh, my gosh, which is remarkable. He got hired there to be the offensive genius, and, I'm still looking for genius in their offense. But I don't think, and this is just my perspective, I don't think there's going to be a suspension by these two guys because they've already threatened a lawsuit against the league, and I think this is one of those things where this can shift the balance of power in the league if the league goes ahead and makes this decision, and I don't think it would be fair to do.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're going to file a class action suit against the company for allegedly saying that nobody told them that this stuff was in there. And, much like and Travis Henry was able to win this, and he got to stay on the play last year in Denver. So if you get some judge to say they can't suspend him, and he can still play, and I think they can probably find somebody who's going to say that.
And then maybe drag it out until after the season and then try to figure it out then?
Absolutely.
Well, that would clearly shift not only the NFC North, but I'm not sure I'd want to face Adrian Peterson in the playoffs against that team. Even with Farad as shaky as he is, the Vikings can do a couple of specific things very well. And you do have to, you have to make plays. They're not going to give you the game unless Farad just completely self-destructs. But I don't know if I'd want to see them in the Metrodome in round one.
I don't think anybody wants. That dome's a tough place to play. You can't run the ball. And once Chicago got behind 17-7, the game was over.
That was it.
It was over. But domes, and I've always wanted to be the general manager of a dome team because I think you have a unique advantage by just the snap count. And I know it's very primitive in its theory, but when the opponent can't hear his snap count, then the offense's advantage, which is the snap count, has been neutralized.
Yeah.
So you can't run the ball when you go in there, and you have false starts. You got 1st and 15 instead of 1st and 10s, and you got a lot of bad plays. And if you got a team that can function well outside and in a dome, like Minnesota's defense is big enough to go play outside too, then you can do some damage, and nobody wants to play in a dome. And I think Indianapolis is another team that gave away their home field advantage by playing in this new place, which the crowd noise isn't quite the same.
What you should do is you should have one of your sons set you up for a season on Madden where you're the GM of like the Saints or the Vikings, and then you could just go to town and make all the moves. Yeah,
it would be great. Because people don't realize when you play in one of those domes and you get people coming to your game, you don't worry about a running game. And I have always had this rule, Bill. I'd never take a corner from a dome place. Because corners who play in domes, Dre Bly played at Detroit. Dre Bly played at St. Louis. He goes to Denver. He's now exposed. He can't run. Corners that play in domes live by the pressure that their front's going to get. So they can sit on routes, they can guess routes, they can play a little carelessly because they know the pressure is going to get there because the offensive line can't hear the snap count. But when they go outside and they have to play, it's a little bit different. And so if you take a corner from Detroit, Minnesota, or one of those in free agency, Corey Fuller goes to Baltimore. Al Noga back in the day went from the Vikings to the Redskins, couldn't make a play.
What was the guy? The Rams had a cornerback who left there and did nothing afterwards. I can't remember who it was, though.
Well, Dre Bly went up to Detroit.
Yeah, but that was just another dome.
And then the Denver signed him. So people don't realize when you have a dome, it's such a unique advantage. It's such a unique advantage.
What did you think?
Could you imagine Pittsburgh's defense in a dome?
Oh, it'd be terrifying. Well, what did you not to toot my own horn, but what did you think of my Pulitzer Prize winning article about home field advantage and basically the death of home field advantage in the NFL?
I thought it was great, and then the next week, right after you write it, the road teams are 10-2.
Yeah, I think the last 2 weeks. What's weird is that they're covering all the night games, but during the day, it's something like the last 2 weeks. There's something like 20-2 or some crazy number. But I thought that Pat Steelers game was a perfect example. If it would have been raining at whatever the old stadium was called, it had 40 different names. I guess Foxborough Stadium is the one that settled on. But
Schaefer Stadium.
The terrible turf they had, the pouring rain. I don't think any road team comes in and beats the Pats in a game like that. And in that game, the 1,000 Steeler fans were just as loud as the 59,000 Pats fans. It's pretty depressing.
Yeah,
I don't like where it's going.
Yeah, and these stadiums, like you're right, are just they're so fan friendly that the home field doesn't have it as true as advantage. And it's funny, baseball. I never think home field means anything in baseball because really, does it really matter how pumped up you are to throw a 90-mile or hit a 90-mile fastball? But in football, it does mean a lot. And when the team, when you can send the crowd away. And Bill Parcells has a great line. He says to me all the time, kid, the reason we're in this profession is the silence on the road. And when you win on the road and you hear the silence, that's why we do what we do. That was Larry Bird's favorite thing. Yep. He loved winning a huge game in front of a loud crowd on the road and just walking off and it would be dead silent. It was his favorite thing. All right. How many teams can win the Super Bowl? I would have said there's no way Pittsburgh can win the Super Bowl with my man Max Starks playing left tackle, but what they did this weekend was beyond me. And they have ingredients to do it. I think they got the quarterback. They've got enough for their running back. If he can come back even healthier this week, they've got a little bit of a running game. And they got a defense that's going to keep them in every single game. So we have Pittsburgh, Tennessee, the Giants. They're in another category. I think they clearly could. I don't know if Dallas could win it. I don't know if they've got enough of attention to detail to win the game. I think there's always going to be a collapse. It'll be a special teams breakdown. It'll be something. The other team that I think has a chance to win it, and they're ugly as hell when you're going to laugh at me, are the Tampa Bay Bucks. Only because they play really good red zone defense. They're always in every game. They're actually getting plays out of their kicking game. Now, Clifton Smith can return some kicks and punts. And I know Garcia looks ugly. He really is tough to watch. But because of the way they play defense, and look, they snatched the MVP away from Drew Brees. They took my vote. Drew Brees has the ball with 3:24 to go in the game, at game tied, and he throws an interception. He gets the ball back with 1:52 to game and only down 3 points, and he throws another interception. That defense is faster. That defense is not quite as good as the Baltimore Ravens of 2000, but they cause the same effect. They turn the ball over. They're fast. They tackle well. And those are the things you got to have with defense. And they're good at home, too. So I think for them a lot will depend on what seed they get and how many home games. They couldn't get a number 2 seed, could they? Yeah, they actually could if they somehow passed Carolina. Yeah, they're ahead of Carolina. They've beaten Carolina. They're both. They play this. Do they play this week? Yeah, and I think that Carolina losing in Atlanta gives Tampa the first place, so they have the number 2 seed. So you would not throw Baltimore into that teams that could win the Super Bowl mix? Well, I think that they're the next level behind the Bucs. It's funny. That would be my third team. And Baltimore, read everything I just said about Tampa, it fits in with Baltimore. And don't minimize what Cam Cameron has done offensively because they manufacture points as well as anybody. I like them a little more than Tampa because I think Tampa really has trouble moving the ball and scoring points, and it almost seems like an accident when they get a big play or a 3rd and 12 or something like that, whereas Flacco can move around a little bit, and they have a couple receivers who can make plays, and they make plays on special teams, and their defense makes plays. I just think they're a little better. And I think you'd feel better about them if they hadn't gotten killed by the Giants, but
they were in that game. They were driving. It was 20-10. The pass hits Mason's helmet. Giants score a TD. I still feel like that game could have been close. So if that game was close, would you have felt better about them?
Yeah, the other game that bothers me is the Colts game, and I think the one problem with the Baltimore defense, the way I see it, is if you know how to attack it, if you make plays. See, Indy did it the right thing. Indy said, you know what, we're not even going to try these 12 and 14 play drives. We're trying to make big plays down the field.
Yeah.
And if you can make some big plays up the field on Baltimore, which some of these teams in the league can do, that's how you beat Baltimore.
Now,
and if you make Flacco play from behind, I think you can do some damage. Now, I still think they're right there. I think now their special teams isn't as good as Tampa's, so that kind of that's why Tampa got the edge. But I think that they're a unique team. They're tough to play, and nobody wants to play Baltimore or Tampa in a playoff game because they know the score is going to be low and it's going to be kind of a nutty, gritty game.
What about Indianapolis?
Well, I mean, look, when he won in Minnesota, when he just willed the team to win in Minnesota, how do you ever count them out? And then this week, in the ugliest game of all time, he doesn't even find a way to win. Their defense finds a way to win. And they had no business winning that game, but they found a way to win. And I think something about knowing how to win is important. They've got the number 5 seed. I think they've got it locked up. That means that puts them in Denver, which you couldn't have a better team to play in the playoffs than the Denver Broncos because he'll throw for 4,000 yards against them.
Yeah, and the Colts always beat Denver.
And what is the worst? I mean, Denver, it cracks me up that teams try trick plays against Denver's defense. Why don't you just run your offense? They're more than willing to give you 7 yards at a clip if you like.
I saw that you wrote that. I was thinking the same thing. What are you running these crazy plays for when Denver stinks?
Yeah, I mean,
although that wasn't the worst coach move of the week because the Tom Cable the field goal flip to our fat kicker Janikowski, that's got to rank up there. I mean, in all-time history, is one of the worst plays ever run in the history of football.
I like Nnamdi Asomugha's explanation. He said, I thought we were just joking around with that in practice. He said, I never thought we'd run that actually in a game. He's quoted as saying that.
It's 3-3. You kick a field goal, you're up 6-3 against a team that can't score. And instead you run. I mean, to Janikowski of all kickers.
I mean, when you're playing Herm, I mean, if you can just keep it close, you got a chance.
Yeah. Well, he built something last week.
Yeah, let's build something together.
Let's build it. So Jets in New England, you're crossing off.
The New England's, and I'm going to catch some grief for this, but I would be a little worried if I was a Jet fan about Favre's performance in the wind, rain, and kind of dampness. And it wasn't even cold, Bill, back in New York last weekend. It was 40 degrees. I mean, now, obviously the wind was, I'd be a little bit worried about that.
You know what shocked me in that Denver game? The play, you watched that whole game, right?
Mm-hmm.
The play when they're near the goal line, they really need a touchdown. He rolls to the left. The whole side is wide open. Like either he scrambles in or he gets to the one, and instead he tried to force a pass between like 17 guys. And that made me think.
He's 39 years old.
Yeah, he's 39 years old. He's not really crazy about getting hit anymore, and he doesn't have the mobility that he did. Yeah. But I thought that was the most interesting play of the season that I've seen from him. Just he looked like an old guy in that play. He wanted no part of running that 5 yards.
And I think this is the time of the year where you as a Jet fan, and I know the Packer fans, is he going to be the Brett Favre of Chicago and the Brett Favre of the Giants? Now, everybody says to me, well, he played good against Seattle. Well, I think Seattle's a Division II defense, so I don't know if anybody can play good against them. I just would be worried. And New England, I don't think New England's out of this because I think their schedule now actually turns in their favor a little bit. They go to Seattle, get a little healthy there.
Yep.
I think they've got Arizona at home, so they know they're going to beat them. I don't think they really have a tough road ahead of them where if they can get to 11 wins, anything can happen. 11 wins will get you in. I've never seen a team win 11 that doesn't get in.
And, that Pittsburgh game, if they had just made a couple plays, that game, maybe they win by 20 points.
And that was been the story. The Colt game, I mean, they're actually, if you watch the Colt tape and just watch the coach's film, they're the better team than the Colts. They just made 2 or 3 mistakes that the Colts didn't make.
Yep.
And when you watch the Jet tape, it's the same thing. And I thought that Kerry Rhodes had the most prolific thing of all. He said it's usually us that makes the mistake down the stretch. This year it was the Patriots.
Well, and on the flip side, the Belichick era was defined by not making those mistakes.
Right.
Year after year of not making those one or two dumb plays that the other team made. I'm going to throw this at you. The Jets rely on two old guys who might not hold up. One is Favre, the other is Chris Jenkins. When's the last time he played a full season?
Yeah, and, he looked bad last week, and I think that the one thing the Denver game has done to the Jets is exposed how to attack the Jets. And we're in a copycat league, as we can see every week how the Wildcat comes in. Everybody runs it. Even if they don't have the players to run it, everybody feels compelled just to run it because everybody else runs it.
Yeah.
And I think that now the Jets have the Patriots did it. New England did it, and then the Denver just modified it and did it. Now remember, Denver never changed formations. They were in one formation the whole game. They were in three receivers to the right and one receiver to the left the whole game.
Yeah.
And they just were saying to themselves, look, we're not going to let you play your base defense against us. You're going to have to get to nickel. And I think the Jets are going to have to face that all year.
Jets may have peaked about 3 weeks too early. Not sure. The Pats definitely haven't peaked. They might have it in them this last month to crest at the right time. I mean, I'm not saying they can win the Super Bowl, but I would not count them out in the AFC East. I still think they can jump the Jets.
You know what makes me laugh, Bill, is when people criticize Castle for not playing good against the Steelers. There's a line longer than a New York State driver's license line on teams quarterbacks that didn't play good against the Steelers defense.
Right.
I mean, it just goes without saying. I mean, that's a hard defense to play, and that's like Phil Simms tells me all the time. When he used to play the Eagles back in the day, if he could be 10 for 27 and win the game, he thought he'd have a heck of a day. And that's kind of the way to play the Steelers. It just matters if you can find a way to win the game, not really what your stats are.
So if you had to pick a Super Bowl right now, give me the two teams.
I'm going to go. I'm going to just stay vanilla, and I think the Giants are by far the class, and I think they're relishing in this Plexico being out. I think they enjoy it. Eli had his best game plan last week in light of the Burrows situation. So I just see them being just so tough. And I said this before. I think the most valuable player in the league are those 5 offensive linemen for the Giants, and I think Tennessee, got a dose of reality with the Jets, and I think it woke them up. And I think they're going to be really hard to play in the playoffs. So I would go those two teams.
I think I agree. I think people are underselling Tennessee at this point.
Yeah,
I think played one bad game, and then things went wrong, and stuff happens, and it's the NFL, and you're not going to play 17 great weeks.
Jeff Fisher needed a reason to get reality into his team. And sometimes you believe your press clippings, just like I expect the Jets to play a lot better against the 49ers this week because I'm sure Mangini's got their attention.
Hey, I mean, if the Pats had lost to Baltimore last year, it would have been the best thing that ever happened to that team. And unfortunately,
I agree. I mean, they would have won the Super Bowl. I clearly think that, and I think that that flag wouldn't have hung 16-0 in their stadium, but I think they would have had another Super Bowl flag. I think there's no doubt about it.
Last question. You've kind of made the transition. You were working for all these NFL teams all these years. Now you have this blog. You have all this great stuff in it. You're going to the NFL Network. Can you pass the point of no return where you can't go back to the NFL? Like you become a media guy?
I don't know. I've always borrowed the Bruce Springsteen line. I can live without working for a team. I just can't live without the football.
Right.
And, and he can live without being a rock star. He can't live without the music. And so I've always stolen that. And I like football. I like talking about football. And sometimes when you work for teams, I know fans find it hardest to believe, you're not really allowed to talk about your team or talk about football. You're supposed to just nod your head and keep doing what you're doing. And This is a little better form for me.
So you think maybe this is where your life is headed?
As of right now, unless somebody comes down and thinks I know what I'm talking about and offers me a job, then, I'd have to consider it. But right now, I enjoy doing it. I like the league. I like football. I like watching football, and it keeps me involved. And I get to watch my 2 sons.
Because the first few weeks, it felt like you didn't want to totally say what you wanted because you didn't want to, maybe pee off whoever or call out some GM, but now it's kind of like you're just slinging it. You're like Jay Cutler in the Meadowlands. You're just slinging darts.
Well, I
love it.
I just think, to me, football is unique. It's okay for guys to go on TV and talk politics and say what they think, but when you get in football, you're not allowed to say what you think. I just kind of find that really to be ridiculous. I'd much rather say I'm better at saying the truth. That's probably why I'm not in the league right now. I'm better off just saying what I think. Well,
out of all the jobs that are probably going to open up, and I think there's going to be a few of them, what do you think would be the best? And I'm not saying you're saying this is the team I'd love to take over. I'm just saying, what is the best situation? Like, let's say you're Bill Cowher, and Bill Cowher can basically pick wherever he wants to go and have personnel control and be the coach. What is the single best situation that will be open this winter?
In Bill Cowher's situation, he's only going to go to a team that has a quarterback. I mean, he's not going somewhere. He's not going to pull a Hank Stram and leave the Chiefs and go down to the Saints and just destroy his career.
Right.
And we've seen this happen with a lot of coaches. They go somewhere else and their career goes down the tubes. I mean, one of the reasons Lombardi took the Redskin job wasn't because Edward Bennett Williams offered him 3% of the team. It was because Sonny Jurgensen was there. And that still is going to motivate Bill Cowher. But if you look at the jobs and take the quarterback out, the best job in football is the Lions' job because there's resources, there's facilities. Everybody in the league's always wanted to go to the Lions because the owner's so loyal. And there's no accountability. I mean, everybody, Bill. There's not a guy in the National Football League, and some would shock the fans, that doesn't want to get the Lions job because they know it's a great situation, and the fact that they really haven't had any infrastructure or any knowledgeable front office people running that team for a very long time.
But they don't fit the quarterback part.
They don't fit the quarterback part. That's right. So I just said that, Cowher's going to look at it differently than the way I answer the question. I think Cowher, the Cleveland situation, if he thinks Brady Quinn's the answer, which I'm not, you can't think of Cleveland with Derek Anderson because you can't honestly attach your hopes to coming out of retirement to that situation.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, Cleveland's one of those. San Francisco doesn't have a quarterback.
Well, if I'm Cowher, I do the Lions and I spend some money on Castle. And I know that going into the situation, I have a chance to be a hero, not only to the fan base, but in Michigan, I'm in a no-win situation. God, I'm turning into Hubie Brown. I'm doing the first person plural tense, whatever it is. I'm in a no-lose situation because I cannot do worse than the last guy. Like, basically, you're Donnie Walsh magnified by 10. Donnie Walsh with the Knicks.
Right.
You can't lose. Whatever you do is a step up from the last situation. And then if it somehow turns out correctly, what is a bigger payoff than turning around the Detroit Lions?
And people don't realize how important football is to it, and I think that football is important to the state of Michigan. It's part of their culture, and unfortunately for the Lions to be so bad, people say, oh, it's a hockey town. No, it's a football town. High school football is huge. There's a lot of great things about it, but for some reason the Ford family has been very loyal, going back to Russ Thomas. The coaches, they've kept their front office in play, and they just haven't had the right people, and sometimes it takes a long time to get the right people there.
You know why I think one of the reasons that it means so much, you always hear in the NHL, you always hear about the original 6 franchises. They don't really have that with the NFL, but I do think if they did, the Lions would obviously be one of the original 6. When you think of how long they've been around, that you're talking about like somebody's great-grandfather growing up a Lions fan and passing that down. So in a way, they're almost like a baseball team, like the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Cardinals or whoever, these teams that have been around for 110, 120 years, and they just get passed down. And I think that's why the Lions mean a little more than, the Jaguars or the Texans or whoever, because they've been part of people's families.
It's like last night, the Texans put on those ridiculous uniforms. There's certain franchises that the uniform is part of the franchise, and you can't change it. Now, Matt Millen went in and changed the Lions, which to me was sacrilegious. The Lions, the Vikings, the Steelers, the Bears, those original Papa Bear, the Packers, those original teams from the old days.
Giants.
The Giants, they should never change their uniform.
I agree.
They should have the same uniform all the time because that's the fabric of the league. And when I look at the Lions on TV and I see that black in their stripes, people don't realize the Raiders' silver and black, the silver came from the Lions. The silver in their uniform came from the Detroit Lions. The black came from West Point, the Army team. And that's how silver and black got there. And so when some other team's copying your uniforms and you're changing it, something's wrong.
Mike Lombardi, keep slinging it like Jay Cutler. The wind, the rain, don't let it bother you. Just keep throwing those BBs.
Have you ever seen a guy throw the ball better in the wind and the rain than Jay Cutler did?
He has games that make you think like he's going to be the greatest quarterback in the history of the sport. And then he has other games where you're like, wow, what just happened? Yeah, he is the most hit or miss. Wouldn't you agree? He's the most hit or miss QB in the league.
Yeah, the way he spun the ball in the Meadowlands on Sunday, I'm still thinking about it today. I just can't believe the throws he made in that game and people. It was so great that people didn't even understand how much the weather was an element in the game.
Yeah, and that was one of those games. I think that might have been the most shocking game of the season for me because I just thought Jets pound them. Denver's going to have to throw the ball in crappy weather. Like, this is a foregone conclusion. It's how this is going to play out. And instead it was the opposite. But that's why I got to love the NFL.
Yep.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bill.
Mike Lombardi, reach you on the National Football Post, nationalfootballpost.com. Good luck.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.